Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Look who I found. Brought along for the ride.
Hey, everybody.
Brendan.
It's great to be back.
Brendan Kennedy back for I don't know, a reunion.
Just like the good old days.
That's right. Lots of stuff to talk about tonight, folks. We have Kevin Michelizzi will be joining us in about an hour to update us on what is happening with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Major escalations over there. Attacks inside Russia. More unrest in Crimea. Kevin is our guy on the ground over there, and he'll give us the most up-to-date information, and you can always count on him to be factual in everything that he brings, a very credible voice, and we're privileged to have him join us as part of our team. So really looking forward to that. And Brendan, I guess you're still eager to comment on Canada's speed demon. Are we freezing up? Can you hear me okay, Brendan? We have some technical problems and we just lost Brendan. Anyway, Brendan says he wants to comment on Chrystia Freeland, Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, and her speeding ticket, which she recently became the proud recipient of in the past week. So we'll probably get him back to comment on that. And we may have some time to comment again on these wildfires. In fact, I know we will. So the wildfires out west in Canada, we'll talk about that. And Trump and his mugshot. Lots to talk about there too. So stay with me. All that and a whole lot more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm back, and Brendan is lost out there somewhere in cyberspace, but he'll be here. Don't worry. He's resourceful. He'll find his way back to us through the metaverse. Let's start with an explanation. Why wasn't I here yesterday? It wasn't just a day off. We had a big storm blow through, and as a result, no electricity all day long. Not much time to prep for the show. And in addition to that, I had massive cleanup to do in my yard. Big, gigantic tree branches came down. I was very fortunate in that that's all that really happened. Some wood to chop up and so on. But many of my neighbors not as fortunate. Flooded basements, other damage. One neighbor lost a bunch of the shingles off his roof. It was a pretty wicked storm. But yeah, I was pretty lucky, but I had to take some time to get things back in order here, and we finally got the electricity restored. It was gone all day, overnight, and through the whole day. But we're back to normal here pretty much now, except for one thing. One other thing happened yesterday, which was unfortunate and honestly not fully explained, and that is that we are now banned on YouTube again for another 2-week period because it's an additional strike. So I'm sorry to all the people out there in YouTube land on the main YouTube channel not able to watch us tonight. I'm sorry, but I can't even say sorry to those folks because you can't see us. And you know, with these YouTube things, Brendan, they never fully explain why you're receiving these strikes. They just say that it's for this reason or that reason, but they never exactly identify the real reason why. I'm left scratching my head on this one, honestly.
I'm wondering if it has anything to do with Trump, because the Trump derangement syndrome these days is pretty deranged. Like, really weird how people are quite upset about anything to do with Trump. And I've seen you've had a video or two with Trump in the display. So it's like, I wonder, I don't know. God knows. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, this is another one against another channel. I'm fed up with it. As you know, we ran that. We had a censorship protest where we were running just video for hours and hours of Fred the Freedom Fish, directing people over to Rumble while we were running that as a way to protest YouTube and Facebook censorship. But anyway, we can't continue to do that. I think maybe that's what pissed them off, Brendan, is they didn't like us protesting their censorship on their platform. In any event, we're not broadcasting on all the YouTube channels tonight, so sorry about that, folks. Another interesting development is we are still expanding this network of independent journalists and streamers. So we are sharing platforms with other journalists, including Kevin Michelizzi and Lori and soon others, so that when one journalist is censored or banned, we're providing access across different platforms to make sure that people still have a voice. So we are broadcasting tonight on a whole bunch of different locations, which is pretty cool. So even though they've censored us, we still have a voice thanks to a coordinated effort among independent journalists and live streamers. Any thoughts on that, Brendan?
We need to stick it together. Like, teamwork is what's going to do it, right? So, but I mean, the tech oligarch is, I don't know what we would ever do to get rid of a California-based industry that is very politicized, and it just makes you sick.
Yeah.
So that's good though. Like, it's people are working together. It's kind of like a sticking it to the man.
Yes, and that will expand over time. We're working on some other things to just make sure that well, as best we can, try to make sure that we're not marginalized and canceled through this online censorship. Um, and here's let's dig into this here tonight. Let's go into this thing with Trump. Here's our thumbnail for tonight. The storm arrives, and there you can see, as part of that, Donald Trump's mugshot, arrested in Georgia, and some people think it makes him look cool. What do you think, Brendan?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Everybody loves an outlaw, and now we got our outlaw.
Yeah,
Think
well,
about it.
it seems like they've turned him into something of a martyr again. Fourth indictment now, and there's a new legal battle, I guess, shaping up against him. Another one. This one surrounding the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and this is just another in a huge pile of legal battles that Trump is facing. So, separate from the criminal cases over the past few weeks, there's, I guess, even some conservative scholars who have raised a constitutional argument saying that Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election make him ineligible to hold federal office ever again. They're saying that it really comes down to this: Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment, which says that a public official shall not be eligible to assume public office if they engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States or had given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, unless they are granted amnesty with a vote of Congress whereby they would get a 2/3 vote in favor of letting Trump run again and hold public office as president. Otherwise, not eligible. So there are advocacy groups out there who have argued that Trump's efforts to challenge the results of the 2020 election fits that criteria. And there has been some new momentum gained there because some journalists, and specifically, I believe it was William Bod and Michael Stokes Paulson, who published in the Pennsylvania Law Review an assessment of this, saying that that is, in fact, the case. But it seems to me that they're just throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall, hoping that something will stick, or maybe even not that it will stick, but that they'll get enough spaghetti sauce on Trump that it'll just tarnish his image and turn some voters off to the point where he doesn't stand a chance to win. What do you think?
I think it's making him more popular than ever, and they're going to regret kind of doing this someday. But I think it's a damn shame that, like, how old is the guy? Trump's 77 or something like that.
Yeah, in
Like,
that
he'll be
range,
dead.
yeah.
He'll be dead by the time all this stuff is. I could even possibly clear it up with the way the legal system works. So he's like, the poor guy's going to have legal embattlements for the rest of his life, and he's still fighting. He's fighting hard. So I don't know what we're going to get out of it, but I do know that Trump is going to keep fighting. And that's what he's always kind of done best in his life. This is just another example of crooked laws that they put into place to catch the quote unquote bad guys. I'm talking about the RICO Act.
Mm-hmm.
That's used to squash political dissidents, and this is the exact same thing that came out of the Iraq War with what was the Patriot Act and all of that. These are all things that were put in place that were supposed to protect the country. But you know what? They've taken that sword and they've thrown it at their political dissidents, and we should all be terrified of that.
Yeah,
political weaponization.
What do you think it's doing to the country and people? Is it what kind of damage is this doing?
I think that it's going to create a lot of mistrust with the government. And you're seeing that with all of the mugshots that are coming out from Trump's lawyers. Either they be president or a former, and they got a nice smile. Hey, people know what's going on, and Republicans are terrified, as they should be. And Vivek Ramaswamy, he said, you know, well, who's this, if they're going to do this to Trump? What's to stop them from doing it to you? And that's where I'm concerned. That's my biggest concern at this point. We've already had this in Canada. They've taken plenty of legislation that was there to protect the people, so to speak, and then they throw it against the regular working Joe. So we should all be concerned. We're losing trust in government big time here. They don't care about democracy. They like to say they care about democracy, but they don't care about democracy at all. It's kind of one of those things. It's like whenever they say oh, we care about this a lot, you just know that they don't care at all about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just reading some stuff in the chats here to see if anybody's got any comments. So, speaking of distrust in government, we have a situation out in British Columbia where people have lost so much trust in government, where their faith in our institutions has been, really destroyed. It's, we saw what the cops did in Ottawa during the convoy, and that did irreparable damage, in my view, to public trust in police. And now out in British Columbia, where we have these wildfires, many residents, after watching a lot of videos online, and are convinced that police, local officials, including firefighters, have not just failed them, but are actually working against them. And as a result, they're trying to fight these fires on their own. They're actually going in and, in some cases, stealing, or shall we say borrowing, firefighting equipment from the firefighters, doing runs around police. There was a major confrontation with police. No charges laid at that time, although I guess within the last 24 hours, at least 2 people have now been arrested and charged, face some charges. I'm not clear exactly what those charges are yet, because they've been trying to get around police to go in and bring what they say is aid to people behind police lines where blockades have been set up in order to preserve public safety. So we've seen a lot of videos online in the last, week or so, couple of weeks even, involving things like this. And of course, with all the people upset about what has happened in Lahaina in Hawaii and the wildfires there and the massive number of deaths and the incompetence of the government on full display, it has only fueled this distrust in government out in Western Canada and the Northwest Territories. In Alberta, we've seen the same thing happening. In BC, it has really reached a fever pitch now. And I do have this statement queued up from BC Wildfire Service and government officials during this news conference, explaining they're asked about this very issue. And I thought we would run this tonight to let them explain exactly why they're setting up these roadblocks, and talk about public safety and why things are done the way they're done, so they can provide their side of the story, and then you guys can kind of assess for yourselves. So here's this clip, and I hope this is helpful to you tonight.
And for anyone, one, to get on the queue, and please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. Media will be limited to one question and one follow-up. We have Mara Baines from CBC.
Thank
On
you.
the
This
hot seat.
question is for Minister Ma. In terms of trying to work with some of the folks out there in the shoe shop to fight fires, how are you going to open those lines of communication, given that there's just so much frustration out there? And also, will there be any compensation offered to those folks if they work together with provincial firefighters? Back in 2015 in Rock Creek, the province compensated a group of residents who fought fires to protect their own property. So, just wondering about how you're going to open those lines of communication, and also if some of these people in the shoe shop will be offered compensation as well.
Okay. I'll start off on the question. I'll give Minister Ralston a chance to see if he has anything to add, and we'll also check in with Cliff Chapman on it as well. First off, the BC Wildfire Service does already willingly work with contractors right across the province. We have support staff, we have contractors from all sorts of industries that come with equipment, with training, with experience. The key here is that those wildfire fighting efforts have to be coordinated under the unified command. BC Wildfire Service works with meteorologists and experts to project what is happening on the wildfire and where it will go, where the defense lines need to be set up, what critical structures need to be protected at any given time. And they have a plan. And part of the challenge of having people who I believe are trying to do good things but are uncoordinated with a centralized effort is that they can disrupt that plan, cause wildfire fighters the need to go searching for equipment that they've staged, go redo work that they've already done before. It also reduces the kind of tactics that the BC Wildfire Service can actively implement in those areas. For example, the BC Wildfire Service cannot use a direct aircraft attack or use aircraft to do a direct attack on wildfires if they know that there are civilians in the area. They also cannot execute backburns if they know that there are people's who are in those areas that they are attempting to backburn. So it is incredibly important that these efforts be coordinated, and they already do work with contractors and additional people all over. And when they do use and work with these contractors, they are compensated for that work, but it has to be done under the unified command.
Minister Moss covered very important points. I would say just my experience in being briefed by the BC Wildfire Service is that in any fire action, there's a lot of planning that goes into that, and much of that is not visible, and I was not aware of that myself until I was given these briefs. So pre-planning is very important, and in order to be sure that that civilians are not impacted, they need to be out of the area. So BC Wildfire Service works proactively to reach out to people with skills, with equipment to join the effort, but it's very important that that be part of a unified team approach in order that the firefighting can be the most effective it should be and will be. So that effort is really important. I don't know, Cliff may, as the Director of Operations, may have some further comments.
Thank you, Minister Ma and Minister Ralston. I agree with what you guys have said. I just want to highlight an example on the same complex, and we've had great success working in the Knutsford community just outside of Kamloops and bringing in some of the locals in and around that area to support us on the Rossmore Lake fire. And so this isn't something new. I want to echo what Minister Ma said, is we do want to ensure from a safety perspective and from the tactics that we have on the ground that we are working in a unified way. And so those are the conversations that we started last night. We're going to continue today to see if we can come to an understanding of what that's going to look like to work together to try to protect the areas in the North Shuswap and beyond as that fire continues to move forward. So we are interested in this conversation of working together. But again, I want to stress it has to be done in a safe and coordinated way. And we have seen examples of that in BC over the years. And even this year with the Knutsford example, we had the community of Southside really step into the response effort in 2018, and we continue to open up this opportunity for communities to work with us as we work to protect communities, infrastructure, and really, get that fire outside of the area where it has the threat to the community.
Next question. Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. So my second question is around communications in the Shuswap. Residents there say the evacuation notices from the district came too late, that the fire was already approaching very quickly. Is there any thought to helping regional districts that don't have a lot of resources so they can get the word out in a more timely way? Is there a possibility of maybe a more unified provincial kind of system, or helping smaller regional districts with communications during a time that they're under wildfire threat?
Yeah, absolutely. EMCR and BC Wildfire Service, all of our emergency management partners, we work very closely with the local government to support them in all of their needs, including communication needs as well. For instance, local governments, regional districts, and First Nations can request that a broadcast intrusive alert be sent out on their behalf. So that's the BI alerts are the ones that get sent directly to your cell phones, to the radio, to television. That being said, every community is different. And in many of these remote areas, cell phone reception is spotty. It is something obviously that our government is working on with our connectivity work to try to connect all of BC with high-speed internet and cell phone service and so forth, but that work is incomplete. And so there are some areas where connection is spotty and a BI intrusive alert might not be the best way. And in those cases where action has to be taken very quickly in terms of evacuations, RCMP, search and rescue volunteers, and other responders will physically go door to door to evacuate people. With that, maybe I'm just going to check to see if Cliff or Peter have anything else that they wanted to offer on that.
Next we have Keith Baldry from Global News.
Very much. I think it's a question for Minister Ralston. The 2003 post-wildfire review report, I think it was by George Abbott, after the Kelowna wildfires about 20 years ago, highlighted thousands of square kilometers that needed wildfire fuel clearing before the season began. But experts say only a small percentage of that has been done over the years. Can you talk about how much was done before this season and was enough done? And why more wildfire risk reduction treatments weren't accomplished in the last number of years?
Thanks very much. The 2003 report, I think, if memory serves me correctly, was done by former Premier Gary Filmon from Manitoba. Yes, there is a very well-developed program, Fire Smart. In some parts of the province, it's been taken up very substantially. What that involves is basically work to remove the potential fuel from a fire in what are called, the jargon term is interface areas. That's where houses and subdivisions and buildings join the forest, and that's the areas that are typically most at risk. So the idea is to, in advance, pay for crews to remove that. It can be on public land and on private land. Those programs are well developed. The uptake has probably not been what we hoped for, although we did hear earlier in the season about the Mount Knox fire in Kelowna. The Chief Administrative Officer of Kelowna complimented our department, the Ministry of Forestry, on the impact that the Fire Smart program had in removing fuel. And he said it was a significant factor in being able to bring that fire under control very quickly. I expect that this will be the subject of discussion at the Union of BC Municipalities convention in a couple of weeks. And encouragement will be given to municipalities. The funding is there. It just simply, I think, hasn't been taken up. I think people sometimes think that these are not essential programs. These are make work programs. They're the very opposite of that. They can be the difference between successfully extinguishing a fire and seeing a fire go on to profoundly damage a community. So we are strong proponents, I know Minister Ma is as well, of the Fire Smart program. And we expect to see and encourage a significant uptake of the program beyond what we've seen already. And as I say, I want to compliment those landowners, those cities that have participated, and encourage others to, given the results that are possible in terms of prevention, take up the program as well. Thank you.
Do you have any follow-ups?
Yes, thanks for the correction, Minister. That you're right. It was Gary Philman, not George Abbott.
Any thoughts there, Brendan?
To that line of questioning.
I find it interesting that a lot of people are taking it into their own hands in order to protect their homes and stuff. Like, my heart goes out to these people. This absolutely sucks. This whole summer has been, it's just been so weird. Like, I don't know how much smoke you got down in Chatham, but in Sarnia, where I'm at, it was weird. There was something eerie about all this. But you got to be safe out there. Like, it's really dangerous dealing with these fires. It's insanely dangerous.
Yes, it is. And it troubles me when I see people trying to get around police barricades. It seems to me that some of the people coming out may not be there because they want to help fight the fires. It may be there because they want to fight the cops or fight the government. I think that might be why some of the people are coming out. It seems quite apparent to me. That being said, I can tell you that over the years, I've been in media for like 30 plus, over 30 years. I've covered literally thousands of fires and car accidents, literally thousands. So I've been to many emergency scenes, and I know how they are controlled and how things work. And it is common practice to set up roadblocks. It's done because they need to preserve public safety. If you have, and the safety of the emergency crews as well, who are down the road someplace with their emergency vehicles. If you have fire trucks out there fighting a fire, you have fire hoses running across roadways, you have people walking around on the streets worried about fighting fires. If you have buildings on fire, there are propane tanks out in the country, or oil tanks, you have natural gas lines running into buildings, in cities. So they get the public back away from the burning structure to a distance where it is deemed to be safe. You can't have cars driving up and down the road when you have firefighters out there trying to fight a fire and you've got hoses running across the road. If it's a forest fire, you have burning trees. If someone drives in, a tree can fall across the road, trap somebody in there, and you could get burned to death. So these are things that, the average person isn't always thinking of.
Well, she said something really, like, to your point there, she said something very interesting about the water bomber, that the water bomber can't operate if there's any civilians in it.
Right.
And that's very crucial. That's like their number one best thing for extinguishing a lot of fire is the water bomber.
Yep.
You can't operate it if you got people in there.
That's right. Because if they drop the water and there are civilians there and the water lands on the civilians, you have like so much pressure, so much force coming down, you could kill someone by dropping the water on them, and then watch the lawsuits fly. So then you know, you don't want people to die because they got water bombed. It's that's just another example. Or the back burns, right? If you have civilians in an area and you start a back burn and the civilian is in there and they're not aware of the plan, they could easily get trapped in an area by the back burn itself and could be killed. So they're thinking about this in terms of safety. Now, I'm not defending a lot of the government's inaction in preparing in advance. You know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it's very clear that, you know, governments have cut funding for forestry management. He was talking about exactly that kind of program out in BC to mitigate the risk by, you know, removing brush and getting rid of old dead wood. And it's forestry management. And a lot of these environmental extremists don't like to see that kind of thing. So they've cut budgets. You know, a lot of these left-wing neoliberal governments in Canada and the US have cut budgets for that kind of stuff. As a result, you end up with all this dry tinder, and that contributes to the problem. And you know, even just the firefighting budgets, I'm sure that the firefighters in most cases would tell you they could use a whole lot more support, more budget, more resources, more equipment, more water bombers, more of everything. So I have no question that the government did a better job in that regard.
I thought that's why I was paying $1.82 in gas.
Exactly. Exactly.
To your point about dead trees and that sort of thing, I just got back from Northern Ontario 2 weeks ago, and the number one observation I had going down the Highway 17 west is all of the dead trees. There's so many of them there. And you just know it's an accident waiting to happen. And, you know, I'm not unfamiliar with like some people that I've known in my life growing up there. Like I've known many arborists, and it's their job to go into an area and find dead trees and make sure they're marked and make sure that they can get cut down. It's big business up there. It can be very difficult work treading through the bush and doing that. And it can be very expensive to have those services done where they're marking all the acceptable trees to get cut down. Yeah. But they do find uses for these trees. There is a market for it. It's just, it needs to be done. Like I couldn't believe how many dead trees were on the side of the road. There's just no rain up there this year.
Yeah. But, you know, there's such distrust in government and in policing as well, that people have just got it in their heads that, you know, that somehow the government and the cops, and even the firefighters now, they're working against the people, so that people feel like they have to take matters into their own hands. And this just illustrates the damage that has been done because of, well, things like what happened in Ottawa when they beat the protesters. And I said that even back then, this is a huge mistake by the government. They should not do this to the people because this will destroy public trust in policing. And this now is what you get. So indirectly, this is still the fault of Justin Trudeau. Now, that being said, I think there's some other people exploiting the situation because they have other political motives, or maybe they're just meaning well and are misguided. But keep this in mind too, folks. If somebody is telling people to go in behind police lines, right, and go around a blockade, to go in there and fight fires or take aid to someone or do whatever, but if you're doing an end run around the cops, one, you could be charged for doing that. Two, if somebody gets killed or seriously injured, somebody could be held accountable. And if somebody is advising someone to do that and somebody gets killed or injured, then the person encouraging them to do it could potentially be held legally liable. The legal ramifications of this are pretty extensive. So I think people should be a little more careful about some of the things that they are saying. And I understand the concerns, and I'm with the people on this, but where I'm really at is I'm trying to look out for the people. And that means first and foremost, keep people safe. And I know that people don't want to lose their houses, but you can replace a house. You can't replace a life, right? And you also don't want to be responsible for someone else's death because you've done something like do an end run around and maybe hit somebody, like hit it. Well, how would you feel if you ran over a firefighter who stepped onto the roadway when you were driving someplace because he didn't expect any cars to be on the road because he thought there was a blockade in place to keep him safe? You got to think about
Or
these
how would
things. Like,
how might you feel if they have to radio to the water bomber that you can't drop your load right now because we got a civilian running around down there, and then you end up causing more damage to your friends and neighbors? Like, you got to think about these things because there's more
in
to it
fact,
than.
that's exactly right. And we saw just, I think it was 3 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, firefighters were called out of an area because this group of people came in and they were threatening with violence the firefighters and the cops. So they said, okay, that's it. We're pulling everybody out. So they stopped fighting the fires and they left the area and they went someplace else and they just let that shit burn. I was like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? The mob's going to get us. More of them than there were of the firefighters and cops. So they said, all right, we're gone. What else can we do? We don't, the people up the ladder of command said, we can't put our people at risk. We're not going to have them, potentially in some sort of a physical confrontation with people. So they pulled back and the fire continued to burn. This was counterproductive in my view. Like, I know that maybe what I'm saying isn't popular with people because a lot of people want to take it to the man and take it to the government, but I'm not convinced that the firefighters are our enemies. I'm not convinced that the firefighters are the problem. And taking their equipment is not the solution in my view. This is misguided. I'm concerned about it. I think this is making matters worse, not better.
It doesn't matter what type of disaster you're facing. There's always going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. There's people that will never let a good crisis go to waste, and you need to keep your eyes open for that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, why did people in Hawaii burn to death? Because they didn't leave for whatever reason. And you can, subscribe to any story you want in that regard. But the bottom line is they were there where the fire was burning and they died because they were still in the area. So it makes no sense to me whatsoever to be letting civilians run into the fire. And if people were to die out in Western or Northern Canada because they were running into a fire, the first thing the critics would do is say, why did the government let those people run into the fire? Why didn't they tell them to get out? This scenario is putting firefighters, police, the government in a no-win situation all the way around. I think just a little common sense comes into play here, and I hope that cooler heads prevail.
Time is going to tell. Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and here's what I get back. 1 million auditor says Ricky's a fool. Well, I guess you can fight your own fire then. 1 million auditors, dollars, whatever. That's fine. Hey, Brendan, if you're in a building, like an apartment building, and the fire alarm goes off, what do you do?
Exit the building.
And what would you do then? Like, I would probably call 911, right?
Yeah. So, well, you have to get to safety first, right? So you get to
Right.
safety, and then you call.
Yeah. That's what I would probably do. And then the fire department would come with their truck and their ladder and do whatever they do, and they would fight the fire. That's normally the way I would expect it to work. But I guess 1 million auditors dollars would rather not call 911, stay in the building and tell everybody to get out their garden hoses and their pots full of water and fight the fire without the firefighters. Is that about right? 1 million auditors dollars? Is that what you would do? You'd get okay, guys, there's a fire. Everybody start getting your pots and pans and fill them with water, and then we'll try to put the fire out ourselves. And screw those firefighters. We don't need them. It doesn't make sense to me, but if that's the way you like to do it, I guess you're welcome to. Or, if your house is burning down, don't call the fire department. Don't let them come. Those guys, they'll just stand and watch your house burn. No.
Well,
Yeah, that makes a lot
I
of
mean,
sense.
they just might. I mean, that's
They might.
sometimes that's all they can do. Really, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
gonna
don't know. I
go.
know
It's gonna go.
I've met a lot of firefighters in my day, lots and lots and lots of them, and they're generally pretty good guys. They're, they're my neighbors and they live in my community, and they generally don't want to see their town burned to the ground. Most of them work pretty hard, when they get called out. And the ones I've known, most of them sit around with their feet up eating their tuna fish sandwich until the fire alarm goes off, and then they slide down the pole, hop in the truck, and roll out there and do their best to keep people safe. That's generally the way they operate. I'm not familiar with. I don't know too many of them who are dialed into the world globalist conspiracy to let their communities burn to a crisp. Not the local firefighters that I know. That's a different group of people. Those would be sort of the people maybe out in Davos, but no, Joe, the firefighter down the street from me, he's not dialed into that shit. He's just really more interested in his tuna fish sandwich until the fire alarm goes off, and then he tends to go to work. So when he shows up, I kind of usually let him do his job and put the fucking fire out.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard you swear. Ooh.
Yeah, well, stick around.
One. This used to be a family show.
Yeah, well, we're crying out loud. Hey, let's fight our own fires from now on. Yeah, we'll steal the fire truck. We'll steal it, and then we'll do it ourselves. Just for crying out loud. I mean, I get it, folks. I'm listening to you. Anybody else want to comment on this? Because, apparently I'm a fool.
People are really upset, of course.
I know, and I empathize. I do.
Like emotions are running high right now. Like, people are crazy. Like, this guy thinks
Yeah.
he's the fire chief, and it's not. And he thinks that they're all the firefighters keep their 24-hour, with their 24-hour shifts and everything. The firefighters are flying off to Davos to shake hands with Klaus Schwab.
No, they just want their tuna fish sandwich, and they'd rather the alarm didn't go off. But when it does, they go out, and most of them are pretty good guys. So firefighters in particular, I find, are very, I really like firefighters. Generally speaking, they're really good guys. We had a big storm blow through here, Brendan, this week, as I said. And
I saw that. Woo!
And yeah, I mean, they blocked the roads off here today briefly because they had crews out walking around on the street because they were cut, like huge trees fell over, right? And I should have brought the video. I have video, but huge trees fell down. I had huge branches in my yard. And so when the city crews came around, the ones that are on city property, and even they didn't really care. They're doing everybody's stuff. They're chopping up the trees and putting them in the wood chipper. And when they're working, they block off the road, one block at a time or a couple blocks. And then they're there working. And that's because they don't want cars driving up and down the road and potentially running over the crews or having logs fall on them or big branches off these huge century-old trees. This is the Maple City where I live, they call it, right? And a lot of maple trees around here. So they're just trying to keep people safe. It's not like an evil conspiracy when they just block off the road so they can do their work. It's just a safety thing. Crying out loud.
Yeah, I know that you're about to lose everything, but we don't want to lose you. So if you're in those situations, get out of there. Like, we all remember the horror stories of past forest fires that have blown through towns. Mm-hmm. The job I used to work with when Fort Mac burned down, I was getting phone calls of people who just lost everything, and they're like, "Oh, I can't make payments on this. I lost everything." Like it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. As long as we don't lose you. Even Mr. Auditor Man.
Yep. Yeah, I have no common sense. And so, that's okay. You guys can disagree. You can go fight your own fires. I will call the fire department. That's fine with me. That's all there is to it. So that's great. So some people like to fight their own fires. Some people don't. Sometimes people feel like nuts. Sometimes they don't. What's that commercial? That's the old Almond Joy commercial, right? Oh, I'm getting old. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, you got like 50 years on it.
All right. Well, just remember 1 million auditors dollars. If somebody gets hurt or dies, I'm sending them to you. I'm sending their families to you. Okay? And a few others that I've seen online encouraging people to take matters into their own hands. Firefighting vigilantes. Somehow I think it's got a little less to do with fighting fires and a little more to do with something else. What might that something else be? I wonder. Well, maybe we'll explore that more when we come back, or maybe not. I don't know. I'm a little tired of the subject matter, actually. Let's take a little break here, Brendan, and we'll reconvene on the other side of this.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
I'm back, and waiting in the back room, Brendan, is our friend Kevin Michelizzi. Let's bring him in, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin.
Good to see you both.
Hello there.
Good to see you too. You guys have not met before, so let me introduce you. Brendan, meet Kevin, and Kevin, meet Brendan.
Brendan,
Hey,
pleasure's
how are you?
mine. Doing good.
Likewise.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us tonight, Kevin, because there's been a lot of action, a lot of new developments with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Where shall we begin?
Oh, I don't know. They've been keeping us busy the last few nights. We've talked about escalations, over the past couple of weeks, and I think Ukrainian Independence Day was the culmination of it all.
So you've seen some new attacks in your area. Kevin, of course, is over in. Maybe you can explain where you're situated and where you're kind of looking at things.
Yep. Well, I'm right here in Crimea, so very southern tip of Western Russia, and I'm actually down over, this way down here, but all of our attacks have been, get the finger right, up over in this direction. And of course, we've had attacks on Moscow and the Moscow region. So, this little cape up here, way up over here. Yeah, I'm not real good with a green screen, am I? So that's the Cape Tarhanut. There's a military base there. If you go a little bit to the west, you've got this Snake Island that they originally had attacks from. And it's believed that a lot of these attacks, excuse me, are coming from that area at this point. Odessa's been pretty much eliminated from the picture, but we started out on the night of the 23rd. I think I sent you a report on that one, Rick, with the destruction up there on that cape of a Russian air defense system. Now, the Ukrainians reported it as the destruction of an entire battery of S-400 air defense systems, which is a fairly new one. What happened is they actually blew up one S-300 air defense missile launcher. They flew a bunch of drones at the area. Russia used up the air defense battery that they had loaded, and they used a British Storm Shadow missile and hit one launcher. So that was the start of the whole deal. And
so they just got one launcher because
they got one launcher.
Yeah, and because the report said that they had taken out the air defenses, which sounds much more serious.
Yeah,
a little misleading.
It's quite misleading. And like I say, it's an S-300, so it's actually an older Soviet missile system. A lot of what they've got in Crimea are S-400s and S-500s now. So, and then we followed that the next night with a supposed attack on the military base by Ukrainian forces, which turned out to be a rubber boat with some guys and some rifles. They did get to the shore, and we're making a couple of shots.
I've just got some footage here. I'm just bringing up. I'm not exactly sure what we're looking at here. This is just general footage, and I think what we're talking about here is just information leading up to the the F-16s coming into play here, which I think is part of why they're probably trying to attack those air defenses.
Yeah, and the F-16s were still, middle to end of next year before they get them.
Yes.
And of course, they're getting a 1-month training in English before they can fly the jet. So not real effective training for guys who don't speak English.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I just wonder about not just providing the jets, but then they need all the parts and the crews and everything else that goes with that, because there's logistics that comes into play here. If you don't have that in place, then you can't maintain those jets properly. And I just wonder how effective those F-16s will be against the Russian Air Force. They're an older jet. They're actually, I think, pretty close to end of life, really.
Yeah, and I recall that when Yushchenko was president, the United States actually gave them 5 F-16s. And this was pre-2014. But, they stripped all the advanced electronics out of them. So they really weren't useful jets. They were, junk.
Yeah. So I don't know what they'll do in this case, because they are actually going into the into active zones, right? So they'll need some sort of equipment on board so that they're what can we say, NATO compatible? Would that, even though Ukraine isn't technically a NATO country? Yeah.
Well, they're not a NATO country, but they are a NATO army.
Yes, they are.
They've been being trained by NATO for years. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're seeing major escalations there. We saw actually in that footage another building, I believe that was in Moscow, that had been attacked with a drone, and there was some damage there.
Yeah, they had hit the drone, and the shrapnel hit the side of a business building.
Yes. So, again, where else are we seeing escalation from your perspective?
Well, we go to this Cape again, and the interesting thing there was this, this rubber boat that landed with a few guys on it. They hung a Ukrainian flag. The videos that they posted said that they were at the military base and hanging it on a military base. Actually, what they did is they hung the flag on the side of a campground toilet building, and some camper got out of his tent in his underwear and his hunting rifle and went out and chased him away with his hunting rifle. So that was kind of interesting. We had 42 drones the night of the 24th to the 25th. So 42 drones into Ukraine from the north of us there, right up here. And the 25th, they also they were bombing Belgorod 70 times. We actually had a bunch of drones in the Moscow region. So they didn't make it to Moscow. We had them in Kaluga, which is kind of southwest of Moscow. And then again, last night, we had some also in the same area several times during the day. So they had drones in Belgorod, which is just over the border from Ukraine, and then some going towards Moscow again that were taken down.
So what are we seeing here then? Is there a more asserted effort to take this battle, if the Ukrainians to try to take this battle right into Russia and put it on Putin's doorstep? Is this some sort of a public relations exercise, trying to demonstrate something when they can't get the job done back home on their own turf?
It's a public relations thing for their Independence Day. The United States has been pushing them that if they don't get some progress, they won't get this next, several billions of dollars that they're trying to push through, that Biden's trying to push through. And so for their Independence Day, some of my Ukrainian contacts told me that this was really meant to bring fear to Crimeans, fear to Russians in the capital city, and to sow panic in Russians, just to kind of try to get, the civil people to start going against the government. We had no, it was, let me see when it was here. This was the 25th as well. Reports that, we had some hackers put out notices to abandon Crimea that Ukraine had invaded. Again, it's all propaganda. It's trying to get people to be scared and believe.
Has it
Any
been
thoughts there,
successful at all?
What's that?
Been successful at all?
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Has it been successful at all? Is what been successful, Brendan?
Oh, the propaganda?
The intimidation.
It in the Moscow region, it hasn't been successful at all. Crimea, a little bit. There are people who bought apartments here back in the 2014, 2015 time.
Oh, something happened.
CIA's been hacking my internet all day today.
Weird. Let's see if we can improve Brendan's audio here a little bit.
Yep. Oh, I'm back.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah. So Yeah, it really hasn't been too successful. There are people in Crimea who have bought apartments here, both Ukrainians and Russians, and there's some fear with them. They're selling off apartments. It's not enough fear where they're willing to take a loss on their properties, but they're trying to get what they paid for them in the, 2014, 2015 years. But we expect to see more people leave. There's rumors that go around here, and but a vast majority of the people are hardcore. This is our land. This is where I live, and I'm going to stay here and defend if I have to.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it is really, and you're an expert in this area, really, Kevin. This is an information war. This is, from everything you're telling me, this is a public relations info wars exercise. Is that about right?
It is more than you can believe. I actually worked on the plans for NATO to be attacking Russia over Crimea in particular back in 2020. And that was just before I came here. And, United States has been planning this for, a couple of years before it started.
And so the plan that you're seeing enacted right now, without incriminating yourself or doing something that might get you thrown in jail in either country, can you tell us, is this the plan that you saw before or something similar?
It's similar. What I worked on is the actual plans involved the NATO naval and Air Force systems, which we see all the time out here flying, south of Crimea. A lot of the intelligence is coming from Great Britain and the United States. So all of this is part of the plan. Now, they did practice, troops from Romania coming in. We haven't seen that yet, but, Russians and Ukrainians, neither of them particularly like Romanians. They view them as traitors because of, World War II. But, it's following plan pretty well.
So there are a couple of guys that I do follow online. I won't mention their names because I don't want to put them on the spot here or even second guess publicly what they're saying. And I've been kind of in this vein myself, where I'm very concerned about an escalation that could lead to a nuclear conflict. And so when I'm seeing drone attacks right in Moscow, when I'm seeing Ukraine kind of take this across the border right into Russia, I get very, very jittery, concerned. Are we seeing that kind of escalation where I should be more concerned?
I wouldn't be overly concerned about that because there will be, reality is we already have World War III. What do we have going on in Niger? What do we have going on in, other African countries, Taiwan, China? Everybody's fighting, even Kosovo and Serbia. So, you could say we already have a world war. Now, if you're going to the point of worrying about nuclear war, Russia will not do a first strike. They have a no first strike policy. So unless the United States comes in first, and this is my big concern because they believe that a limited tactical nuclear strike is winnable. It's not. You see a small tactical nuke come into play, and the world is over at that point. Russia will launch. Anything that threatens Russia's national state is grounds for a nuclear attack.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on this, Brendan, or the F-16s, or any other aspect of this?
I'm curious. Maybe what if the United States were to lend a nuclear weapon to Ukraine? Would that be sufficient?
Yes. If a nuclear weapon is used on Russian mainland, Crimea, or any of the new republics that Russia has claimed as theirs, because those are Russian territory to Russia now. Any strike on any of them will be a direct strike back at the United States.
Yeah. Did this, I don't know if you're even aware, but I did see a report within the past week that Nicaragua has approved the installation of Russian military bases in Nicaragua, where it appears they would station cruise missiles. Have you heard about that, or do you have any comment?
I don't have any comment on that. We really need to wait and see what goes on there. It's kind of like China talking about putting, military in Cuba. It could just be saber rattling, but then, Russia's put nukes in Belarus. This is we've warned you for years. You guys keep moving things closer to us. So what the heck? We're going to do the same thing. Don't complain that we're doing what you're doing. It wouldn't surprise me if they do. And now you see a lot of these South American countries joining the BRICS organization as well. So they're pulling away from the United States.
That seems to me to be one of the cornerstones and one of the main reasons for this war anyway. This is as much about the world economy and the US dollar being used as the world default currency. This is about the BRICS nations positioning themselves so that they are no longer having to bend the knee to the West and specifically the United States economically. So we have a multipolar reality geopolitically.
And with Saudi Arabia coming into BRICS this year, we now just yesterday had the United States begging them to keep with the petrodollar. And they're like, well, we're going to start trading in local currencies now. Sorry.
That is a huge issue. And I don't think people are paying enough attention to it because it is Saudi Arabia. It was Nixon taking the U.S. off the gold standard and saying to Saudi Arabia, you prop up the U.S. dollar by forcing other nations to purchase oil in U.S. currency. That's what's been propping up the U.S. dollar. Now, at the end of that, say goodbye to the global dominance of the U.S. currency. And if you don't have that, what's that mean? It means the value of the U.S. dollar is going to plummet. And that means massive inflation. It means that the buying power that Americans and Canadians, people in the West in general, have enjoyed now since really World War II, and specifically since the 70s after Nixon, like that is it'll be gone. We'll have to compete. We'll actually have to compete through production rather than just a weaponized dollar. Maybe I'm getting too technical for a comment, but I'll just throw it out there for you guys.
Kind of the point I would like to make with that, like what really concerns me with that is you have the USA is top dog right now, right? USA loses spot as top dog. What always happens when you have a big dog that gets taken out? Power vacuum. When you have a power vacuum, you have a lot of problems. A lot of people get hurt when you have a power vacuum issue. That's what would really be concerning for me about the United States kind of like losing what foothold they've had since World War II, essentially.
I think maybe more accurately, it won't be so much a power vacuum, but it will be the United States being forced to share power or maybe just respect the sovereignty of other nations rather than try to enforce a new world order and a rules-based international legal system where they get to make up all the rules. I think that might be the more accurate assessment of the situation. Any thoughts there, Kevin?
Well, going along the big dog thought process, think about the big bully at school. He can push everybody around, he can steal their lunch money, but one day somebody, whether it's a bigger bully or a bunch of, bullied people, come along as a group, and he goes home crying with a black eye. And I see that as, a definite thing that's coming, at least for the United States. But, you think about Saudi Arabia again, last fall, you see, these pictures of Biden fist bumping, the prince, oh, ha, ha, ha. But that was actually an insult to him. At the same time, you've got Lavrov going there, and they're hugging and patting each other on the back. And so it was a snub of Biden. Of course, he hasn't talked real nice about the Saudis either. So, now, the bullies already coming back and crying. And, here we are again with BRICS, and they're crying again. It's just a matter of time before they come back with a black eye.
And at the BRICS summit, just within the past week, Vladimir Putin, during his address, started everything off speaking about this conflict in Ukraine. Why? Because it's directly tied to all of that. But the United States, the West, is in trouble because you're seeing this coordination, this partnership, this alliance of BRICS nations coming together. And by doing that, they have now formed. They're in the process of creating this monstrous, huge, super powerful economic force to counterbalance what has been going on with Western powers and specifically the US. But it all comes down to, again, this is partly what this conflict in Ukraine is about. This is why the United States would like regime change in Moscow. They would like to put an end to this whole alliance, this BRICS movement, this new economic reality globally. The United States doesn't want this because the United States truly has become a capitalistic society, a capitalistic country. And when I say that, I mean that they have been propping up their economy, not through production, not by actually producing goods to make the world a more prosperous place and raise the standard of living for everyone. They're using their capital, their dollar, and the might of the dollar to force other countries to produce goods at low cost and then import them back in and then support all of that just through debt, basically saying, here, we'll give you this money. And then through inflation, they never actually pay the full price for the goods that they get from these countries like China and India and Bangladesh and Vietnam. And you go down the list, and these corporations have just been exporting the labor costs to countries where they don't have to meet the same environmental standards, while they then, through public relations and marketing, portray themselves as being environmentally friendly. I mean, you're getting the picture, right? It truly has become a corporatocracy, an economic fascistic system that is based entirely on true capitalism, which honestly, I'm a free market guy. People say, well, are you a capitalist? I'm not so much a capitalist, but I am a free market guy. But this is not about the free market. This is about asserting your authority globally. It's about making sure that other countries do your bidding by weaponizing your dollar, using coercion, backing all of that up, honestly, with the military, because even in Saudi Arabia, when they agreed to make other countries purchase oil in US dollars in order to prop up the US currency by creating, honestly, artificial demand for the US dollar internationally, the US in in reciprocation said, we will provide military support for you and defense. So that was the trade-off. So it really still came down to who's got the biggest guns and the biggest tanks and the fastest fighter jets and the most powerful military, so that you can then force other countries to do your bidding through coercion. And that really, in my view, is the assessment of this whole thing, which is why we're at frickin' war in Ukraine. Are you following me?
Yeah. And think about it. Where are your headphones made? Brendan, where are your earpods made? Yeah. So, my iPhone, I know where it comes from. And, you start a war with the guys who are making all your stuff. Now, not only do you have a worthless dollar, you have nothing to import. So when China says, we're not going to send you any headphones, earbuds, iPhones, unless you pay us in our national currency, what do you do?
Ooh.
Yes.
So
this has been this has been a big mistake by the US and Canada and other Western countries exporting our jobs. Some people have become very wealthy engaging in this kind of activity, and the politicians, our governments, have facilitated this, a managed decline of our economies, of our societies, our communities, and it's still ongoing. And I'll tell you, this has been a huge miscalculation. I'm very worried about what's coming in the years ahead, and the not distant years either. I mean, in the next year, 2 or 3, especially after what I saw at that BRIC summit in the past week. Any additional thoughts, gentlemen?
We should all be very concerned. And I was interested with what you said about the free market. And, with all the social engineering we have going on in our country, it's kind of impossible to have a free market. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're so brainwashed for just about everything. Like nobody even knew what Ukraine was. And now all of a sudden there's Ukraine flags everywhere, all around the world. I don't know.
Yeah.
The question I have for all these people flying these Ukraine flags there is, why don't they get on a plane, fly to Ukraine, and fight for Ukraine? It's easy to sit, thousands of miles away and go rah, 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 and send your dollars. But how many of them are willing to fight?
Yeah.
I think all of the ones that were willing to fight have gone and done it.
I agree.
Yeah. And do you think those F-16s are going to make any difference at all, Kevin, in the end?
No.
How many were there?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just asking, how many were there?
I don't know. I'll look it up. How many F-16s are being sent to Ukraine? So we are looking at, let me just see here. It's not that many. Not really.
It was something like
Canada's been talking,
wasn't it?
Yeah. What's really funny is Canada hasn't been able to procure used jets in the world market. Like Canada has been looking for fighter jets for a long time, and it's been quite a hot topic here. I'm pretty sure that they've ended up buying used fighter jets. But anyway, it seems it's kind of a funny contrast that we're picking these global battles and we don't even have.
So we're looking at Denmark sending in 19 F-16s. Back in June, Sweden said it was going to give Ukrainian pilots the opportunity to test its Saab-made fighter. But you had 19 from Denmark.
Yeah, and they sent a couple of those Saab fighters over already, and Russia promptly took them out. So
Yes.
yeah, you're putting, you know, aircraft that are near the end of their life up against Russian Su-35s, MiG-35s. You know, it's, you know, you could say it's a David and Goliath thing. You know, we're giving them some stones and but
Yeah, it's I still think that what we're seeing in Ukraine is sort of a liquidation sale of almost obsolete military equipment by the West. It's like let's just send it to Ukraine, and then it's a way for them to sort of sell it, and then we get to buy it back twice because we have to send our dollars to Ukraine and then pay for the crap that we paid for to build to begin with. We paid to build it in the West, then they send it to Ukraine and say, "Oh, well, we have to fund this war to defend democracy." And then because Ukraine gets it, they rack up a big bill and they say, "Well, it was just a loan." And then when they can't pay the loan back, we have to pay for it again.
yeah.
Just saying.
Well, you know, everything they're buying with your money.
Exactly. Which they bought with our money to begin with.
Yeah.
So we're buying the crap from ourselves again. Isn't this insane?
You know, Moscow recently had their, their 2023 Army showcase, and they put a lot of these trophies that they've taken from Ukraine, the Western equipment. And the thing that Russians find amazing is they look in them and they go, how does anyone run these things? All the instrument panels are in English, all the controls are in English, and they put, pieces of tape with what it is on it because these guys can't use it otherwise. I've got a good friend up in Donetsk, and he said that, often they capture this equipment and the Russians tow it back because they don't know how to drive it. And then they spend time in it figuring out how everything works. Or they get some of the guys who do speak English to help them. And, the guy I'm talking about's an American. He helps them. But, that's no way to train, are you going to train a pilot who doesn't speak English at all to fly an F-16? It isn't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess they're training these pilots in the US now as well, right? So I guess that's happening because they want to speed things up. But what's your assessment of the training overall? Ineffective and ill-advised?
Well, how long does an F-16 pilot train to fly that craft? They're giving them a month of English and 3 months of flight training, and then sending them to the lines with these obsolete planes. I don't think I have to answer that question.
Yeah. Cannon fodder.
I think it's a life.
Yeah, an aerial suicide mission is what it sounds like to me. I wouldn't want to be put into that position. Yeah, because what would these pilots in Ukraine even be flying if they don't have F-16s and they don't have jets to go up against the Russians now? Like, what are they flying? Cessnas or something to learn how to, like, I don't even know what the Ukrainians have for these guys. What pilots? What Air Force? Where are they coming from?
They have some Su-27s. So, F-16 generation planes. But the guys that are flying them aren't really experienced pilots. They just had 2 guys fly into each other over the weekend with their jets. I mean, just head on, boom.
Oops.
And this is in a Soviet jet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kevin, anything else that we should focus on tonight or think that we might be missing?
No, Oh, I was somewhere along. You were talking about him earlier. Something $1 million was asking. Doesn't Russia have enough submarines to just take out the United States? The United States has a bunch of submarines. They could take out Russia too. And I hear this all the time from people in the West. Russia does not have the dead hand system. They do. I can tell you for a fact they do. If a nuclear strike is launched against Russia, it will be the end of the world, because the signals that go out to all their missiles and silos, their launch vehicles, they do not need somebody to push a key. If they don't get a response, these systems automatically say, everybody's been blown up, let's launch everything. So, yeah, be concerned about the United States playing stupid.
I am. I'm very, very concerned about it. Very concerned. And I don't know what else to say about it. I know that a lot of people are not. I think it's just because we've lived under the threat of nuclear annihilation so long that people have become complacent. It's become normalized. But I'm still very scared. Maybe my perspective is wrong. Maybe it's because I grew up during the Cold War, and maybe I'm brainwashed. Maybe I'm just convinced that nuclear war would be a bad thing, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I'm thinking that it would take us back to
too many episodes.
Sorry, Brendan, couldn't hear you.
You watch too many episodes of Rocky and Bullwinkle with the spies, and
Yeah, well, I'm very worried about it, and that's why tonight in our thumbnail I said, the storm arrives, and it's because we've got Donald Trump on his with his mugshot, and I'll bring this up again.
Selling
the storm.
shirts.
Yeah, that's right. But the storm arrives, and in many respects, like, it's true, the storm is upon us, because we have Donald Trump up on all these stupid charges. We have the war in Ukraine ramping up, F-16s going from the west to Ukraine now. Here in Canada, we have obviously a lot of unrest that's going to come to a head next month with this convoy that everybody's talking about. We have all these wildfires where people are very, invested emotionally. They're losing homes. In Hawaii, we've seen, people lose their lives. And we're seeing, a huge reaction to all of this from the public. There's a lot of volatility at play here, a lot of emotion and censorship out of control. The debates are now happening as we try to work our way toward this next election to pick or have selected a U.S. president, however you want to look at that. And it's all coming to, I would say, an emotional fever pitch. The storm has arrived.
Yeah, I'll make Lori proud too. And censoring RFK Jr., censoring news coming out of Hawaii, censoring all news in Canada.
Yes.
And I would say it's more, they ignore everything here more than a censor. They just ignore. Didn't happen.
Yeah, this is true.
Yep. And we've been censored now on our main YouTube channel again. So we're on another 2-week ban. And I don't know what to say about that, because I'm not even exactly sure what it is that was said that got us in trouble, which is the same thing that happened the last time. They're not really specific. They give you sort of a general reason, but it's not really clear. So I'm like, what did I do wrong?
Oh, I can answer that for you. You violated community guidelines.
That's what it was. That's what it was, which is whatever they decide that it is. It really came down to I guess, choice of words or some language that was used or whatever. Okay. And I've come to this conclusion, Kevin, that where YouTube and Google is concerned, YouTube has become a safe haven for extremists because on our channel, we bring people on with a wide range of views. A lot of people I don't agree with, some people I do agree with. We have communists and conservatives and libertarians and socialists. And I mean, we bring on all kinds of people. They don't seem to like that. So I get hammered by the censors on all sides, because if I bring on somebody from this side, I get a strike. If I bring somebody on from the other side, I get a strike over there. It doesn't seem to matter. And because as I sit in the middle and I try to moderate this stuff, I guess I'm getting hit with hate speech. Hate speech strikes because I'm just entertaining people from this side or that side. Meanwhile, the people who are actually engaged in more extremist views, they're left to just say whatever they're going to say online. But I'm trying to be more moderate in my views. So it's actually the middle ground that's being censored. I think it's more voices of reason, voices of moderation. But man, the people out there, I don't understand it, honestly. So I see some really extreme stuff on all sides, and those guys are just left to say whatever the heck they want.
Well, they had to run away from Twitter, so they have to have somewhere to go.
I guess so. So if you want extremist views, just go to YouTube. You get polarization over there. And TikTok, yeah. Yeah.
I had NAFO trolls today because my wife was talking about having a garden in Crimea. Go figure.
It's out of control, man. It's out of control. Yeah. Well, Kevin, I guess we are probably at a point where we can wrap up here. Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. If you want more, my website is right down here. And
Infowars.press.
Yep. Not related to Alex Jones, before you ask again.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us on the program. And I'm glad, Brendan, I'm glad you got to meet Kevin. And Kevin, I'm glad you got to meet Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan.
Absolutely.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll take a brief break and come back right after this. Do not go away.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Exile. The Knights of Malta. Maverick News. Join us. The world is watching.
Have you seen? You probably haven't seen that before, have you, Brendan?
Yeah, I watched the show. What do you think I am?
Oh,
well, I mean, I don't get the show is on while I'm working. So I try to, like, when I'm having my coffee in the morning, I try to watch them. So I have seen that. I was wondering, did you see the voices for that yourself? Is that you?
I would never reveal my production secrets. Ever.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, there's truth to that stuff. We are investigating, and getting, into the Knights of Malta thing deeper. Thanks to Choosy, who I knighted, by the way, for drawing our attention to the need to exile the Knights of Malta. How do you feel about it? Is it achievable, first of all?
Actually, I'm pulling a blank on what the Knights of Malta are because when I watched the show, I was like, Knights of Malta? Like, what is that? Like, malt liquor or?
No, it's a real thing. Malta's a place, right? And they actually have, ties to sort of the Vatican, and they have their own. It's not so much a country, but they are sort of a sovereign entity. So they have a building,
Okay.
and yeah, they have sovereign status. So in a sense, some of the main people have diplomatic immunity. Now, I think there is a bit of a misconception. We have to investigate this further, but members of the Knights of Malta, some people believe, have a kind of a diplomatic immunity that means they can't be charged with crimes that might be associated with any global conspiracy, or, and I don't mean a conspiracy theory, but actual conspiracies or criminal acts or plans or whatever. But I don't think that's actually the case, because as I've been looking into it, only a handful of people at the very top actually would enjoy that kind of diplomatic immunity. Other members of the Knights of Malta who claim to be engaged in a lot of charity work these days, because the Knights of Malta, in the modern form, if you go to their website, they say that they're involved in fundraising and, as I say, a lot of philanthropic work. But they have a history that goes back to ancient times. And it is all very true, and this organization really does exist. But if you do look at the list, and there is a list out there of Knights of Malta members, it does tend to be populated by the elite, the well-heeled, the influential, people who are in positions of power globally. So I think Choosy is kind of right on that front, that these people they do represent the elite. And in that sense, if we flush them out and look at really what their true agenda is, we may actually need to exile them, because that is maybe where a lot of the New World Order global agenda is coming from, is from that core group of people. So let's take a look and dig into it deeper. There's some truth to what he's saying. Now, that's not to say that I want to start rounding up all of the members of the Knights of Malta and start, holding courts, and it's got to be a legal thing, is what I'm saying. We have to make sure we're dealing facts. So we do need more research, in my view. We need to be dealing in reality and not some, I don't know, not base any of this on assumptions. Let's deal with facts. But he is right. There is some basis in fact to this. And I think that even if we are able to just effectively identify who these members of the Knights of Malta are, then we can focus in and maybe even start to understand what the motivations behind some of these globalist policies actually are, and what the motivations behind our politicians might be. So let's get into it. And in the end, we might just have to exile the Knights of Malta. Make sense?
Where you're coming from, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I like how you pointed out that, well, Rick Walker is not going to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. So I mean, that's a very important thing. Needs to be whenever you're doing anything like this, or whenever you think about disruptions of power or anything like that, you always have to remember, like, the French Revolution was like a really bad time in human history. Like, we don't ever want to go through that again.
But the good news is the good news is the research that I've done indicates that a lot of these members of the Knights of Malta might not have the immunity that maybe they think they have, or even the general public or people who are maybe awake to this, as you would say. Maybe they might not have the immunity that people think. So that's a good thing, because that means they could be held accountable.
But we're all accountable to God in the end. So
there you
be
go.
immune to
Yes,
whatever.
that's true. And what about Chrystia Freeland? How do you feel? I know you've been itching to comment on her speeding ticket. This is Canada's deputy prime minister, finance minister. She's all in on the climate change agenda. She just about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago was at a news conference and said she doesn't own a car when she was addressing the issue of climate change at this news conference at a supermarket where they were talking about the economy and blah, blah, blah. Oh, I don't even own a car, she said. But she got a speeding ticket.
140 kilometers an hour. That's crazy. Now, I thought that maybe we could do like a public service announcement for the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, and put a little mental reminder that, you obtain maximum fuel efficiency between 50 and 80 kilometers an hour. And when you speed, you burn a lot more fossil fuel and emit those into the atmosphere. And I know how concerned you are for the environment. So we need to make sure that you understand. You need to go between the 50 and the 80 zone. That's the sweet spot for the fuel consumption. Anything more than that, you're just burning fuel. But I don't think you understand, because you're always flying from Toronto to Ottawa and back and forth. Have you seen that? Other news organizations have done some digging, and they found that she takes a plane all the time from Toronto to Ottawa, which is what, a measly 5 or so hour drive, 6 hour drive.
Yeah, that leaves a pretty sizable carbon footprint. Flying like that.
It's like the same province. It's not even like going to like your World Economic Forum meeting or something.
Man,
I think we have ourselves a hypocrite.
Yeah, so I made this thumbnail the other day when I first reported on this. Thanks to you. You were the first one to draw this to my attention, by the way. And so I made this. It
looks like a terrible.
Yeah,
if we can't get to Davos,
she's Canada's speed demon. Oh man. Well, at least
you think this it is funny. I will give it that, but I think it kind of exposes a little something about Chrystia Freeland. This tells us this is an interesting reveal into who she actually is. That she doesn't respect the law. She feels she is above the law. And you know how I said, I'm very glad that you don't take the position of judge, jury, and executioner. Well, that's her mentality right there. She feels that she can do whatever she wants. There's rules for me and not for thee with Chrystia Freeland. Do you think this is going to impact her place in the polls at all, or do you think living in Toronto is solidifying her spot in the next election?
I don't think I don't think it's going to hurt her at all, because the Liberals who back her are fake. They don't care, honestly, about the environment at all. They care about free stuff. They care about power. They just want their party in power so that they can still get all their government handouts. And a lot of that stems from, whether it's a company that's getting a subsidy or a grant or a not-for-profit charity thing that's getting a government handout of some kind, whatever it is, they've got just about everybody on a government payroll of some kind. And in the end, these people don't give a crap about the environment. They don't care about people's rights. They don't care about anything. They just care about the money. Pay me and I'll vote for you. That's really what it comes down to. So a speeding ticket, wrapped up in a big bundle of hypocrisy. What do they care? They'll vote for Canada's speed demon again, with the scrunched up face and the snarly nose and that 1965 Mustang mentality. Yeah, they'll go for it.
Bring that picture back up. You know who she looks like there? Oh my gosh, the resemblance is uncanny. She looks like Danny DeVito from the 91 or 92 Batman Returns as the Penguin.
Oh yeah, you know what? I think you're right.
Woo. She's got that big penguin schnoz kind of going on.
In fact, I think there have been memes made like that. I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can find that. I honestly, I think there have been.
I don't care if anybody thinks I'm being mean here, because at the end of the day, I think this person's a monster. They deserve to be mocked. They deserve to be mocked into the ground. This is
Let me just bring up a
damn
picture of DeVito as the Penguin, and then you can be the judge. So I'll bring up, I'll pull Christy down, and let's bring up Danny DeVito as the Penguin. We'll see.
Tim Burton's Batman Returns. Great movie.
Okay, let's bring it up. Here we go. Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
Come on.
Okay, now you guys be the judge, okay?
It's all in the nose.
It is.
Nose. And in the eyebrows.
Actually, it's very true. See, they should do a reboot on that Batman episode or movie, or make a new one, and she could play the Penguin. And why can't the Penguin be a woman? Christopher Freeland would be perfect for the role, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah, she's got that. She's got that kind of bird-like screech to her voice,
Mr. Speaker, I was only doing 140 in an 80.
And you're quite right, Brendan. The for optimal fuel economy and efficiency, and to save the planet, she should really not be driving past 55 miles per hour, which is about 88 kilometers per hour. She was doing 140. That's almost double the rate of speed at which you achieve maximum fuel efficiency on the highway. I don't know. It sort of makes everything she said about climate change feel maybe just a little disingenuous.
Officer, I was only doing 140. It was a mistake. Mr. Officer, could you just look the other way? Don't you know who I am? I'm the Deputy Prime Minister. Oh, Mr. Officer, you better be careful or I'll get Justin to do something.
He'll block your bank account.
Yeah, that's right. You'll freeze your account. Remember who pays your paycheck.
Exactly. She's a monster.
Sorry, that was bad. not my best impression.
You're pretty good at it.
I don't know if I'm very good at doing Christopher Freeland.
I don't think I've heard a better one today.
You were quite observant, though, Brendan. Quite accurate. The resemblance is uncanny.
Maybe she's related to Danny DeVito.
Could be.
She has that.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. You want to say anything about this? I would call it sort of we're in this. I would say it's almost like a perfect political storm. And Trump has actually, I think, just in the last day or so, made reference to the storm being upon us. And people are flipping out, losing their minds because he posted his mugshot on Twitter after saying he was never going to return to Twitter. And then he returns to Twitter. And this was kind of weird too, because you have his posts on the J6 incident, right? Which we have to be careful what we say because we don't want to get banned off Facebook and stuff. But you have his posts about January 6th, and then he's no posts. And then his first post back is his mugshot, which is one of the reasons people are kind of flipping out. Especially if you subscribe to these ideas that maybe Trump isn't even, the real Trump anymore, if you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So a lot of people out there reading into these things, right? Whatever. So I don't know. When I say the perfect storm, I just mean we have all these political things going on. People are very upset about a lot of things. And now we have, Chris Sky on this world tour talking about lockdowns and mask mandates potentially coming back and appearing on InfoWars. And so there's, in my view, like an international connection here. You're getting a US connection to this, the big convoy coming up, the 1 million person march also in September, everything converging, coming to a head, middle of September, maybe even around September 20th is one of the dates that I'm hearing out there. The big convoys coming. You've got the wildfires out west. That's fueling more and more anger and distrust toward the government. You're seeing, a prelude of what I think is likely to come in September. This is just a warm up, if you will, with these wildfires out west and the public reaction to policing and firefighting. And I understand the erosion of trust and the mistrust and the people getting upset. And now the arrest of Trump on the other side of the border and people angry about that. And Dan Bongino coming on saying, just don't even post bail. Just let him put him in jail and see what they get then, because people are getting angry. And there are a lot of people who want to fight back in some way. I'm a little worried about it because this all seems to be coming to, an absolute crescendo. And it all seems to be, I don't know, almost choreographed in a way to come to a head in September. And that to me has created a perfect storm. The storm is upon us.
Although I'll say, with what you said about Dan Bongino, I feel like my take on that was a little bit different because the Secret Service wouldn't know what the hell to do in the event that Trump was in jail. That was what I took away from it. Like, yeah, go ahead, stay in jail and see what happens. And what would happen is they would have nowhere to house Trump because Secret Service has to be right there with him all the time. They'd probably have to build him his own facility, or they'd have to shut down an entire wing of a prison and give it to him.
Imagine if they convict him and they decide to throw him in jail and sentence him to jail. Like, they're in that exact position at that point. And could you imagine the reaction that you would get from, the Trump base? You want volatility, baby, and you're going to get it just like that.
Well, not only that, take a conviction and let's just say that the judge is very politically leaning left. That would be the worst case scenario, right? People would lose their minds.
Yeah. I think people are losing their minds already, and I understand it. I said this on the day of his arrest when they took the mugshot. I said this is not good for the country because it just, regardless of what side you're on politically, it isn't good for the country because it's creating so much turmoil, and potentially even at some point violence. And I'm really worried about that. I don't want to see that. And it's spilling over into Canada in many respects as well. I'm not happy about this.
No, I'm like, our country's gone. I don't know what to tell you, but at the end of the day, with I don't want unrest in my country. I want my kids to be prosperous. I want to be prosperous. I want my food and housing to be affordable. I want to be able to get ahead in life just by working hard. And I'll tell you this right now, I work a lot. I'm not getting ahead on anything. Nothing. And it's the latest trend now. People are going on TikTok to cry and say, "How does anybody do it? Like, I can't afford a place to live. I'm stuck living with my parents. I'm 25 years old." Like, people are starting to wake up and smell the coffee. Now, Rick Walker, I need to tell you, I need to get a charger plugged in on this right now. So I'm wondering if you might be able to take me off screen for a sec. I'll go grab my charger real quick.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. Let's give Brendan a little bit of a break here, and in fact, we'll take a little break too. That'll give me a moment to gather my thoughts while we move on to our next block of information right here on the Maverick News Channel, where the world is watching.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Yeah, and I think Brendan kind of hit the nail on the head there again. And I said this back during the convoy when the Emergencies Act was invoked. At that point, I said that Canada, as we've known it, was dead. Journalism, as we used to know it, is dead. Doing my best here to try and resurrect it in some way, keep it alive. But even this is a new form of journalism being driven by the medium, as Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. Well, that's on full display here on this channel every single night when I'm with you guys. It's interactive. It's not like television. It isn't like newspaper. It's not like print or even radio. This is different. It's powerful. And in some ways, it's being abused by people. I could almost understand, honestly, these calls for censorship because the government, well, they're engaged in psychological operations, no doubt about it. And in fact, other political forces as well engaged in psychological operations to manipulate the public, to get you to do their bidding, to get you to vote a particular way or act in a particular way, or even come out to a political rally or a protest or do whatever it is that they want you to do because they engage in this kind of psychological manipulation. I could almost understand. I do understand why the government wants to engage in censorship because they want to be able to shut the other side down because they're seeing, in some cases, even, from one side or the other, from their perspective, dangerous rhetoric, dangerous messaging, dangerous to them, maybe even dangerous to society to the point where one side doesn't care if it's dangerous to society as long as they get to tear it all down so they can build back better. And I would say that people on various sides of the political equation are prepared to tear it all down so that they can build back better in their own way, in a fashion, in a way that suits them, that gives them power. So yeah, of course they don't want to just be able to engage in psychological, operations, psyops. They want the censorship there too, so that the other side can't engage and use those same kinds of tactics against them. That is cancel culture taken to the digital level in a new age, in an information age, in the metaverse. And with artificial intelligence now being employed, man, as I said, this new election coming up, you want to talk about election interference or election rigging. I mean, imagine deploying artificial intelligence technology within a political campaign, where marketing campaigns, where algorithms, where, entire campaigns are set up using AI. You don't rely on humans anymore, and suddenly you're miles ahead of your political opponent because you have a robotic digital brain figuring out exactly how to neutralize your political opponent with messaging. In fact, you could unleash, think about this, Brendan. You unleash artificial intelligence that's capable of making memes, fake images, entire videos that are completely fake. Faking a voice, you could even get your political opponent to say things that they would not otherwise say. You could make up all kinds of crap to make your guy look good and make the other guy look bad, and do it with artificial intelligence and roll stuff out and measure the metrics, do split testing using AI to get the information coming back, to compile a database and then learn from that within minutes, and then rejig the messaging over and over and over again to manipulate people's minds without them even realizing it. How scary is that? That goes way beyond Aldous Huxley in A Brave New World. That goes way beyond George Orwell in 1984. That goes right to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? It goes right to, do we actually have a democracy? If one side harnesses the power of artificial intelligence at some point and employs that in a political campaign, the other side is doomed. Because once they seize power, they can continue to use AI in order to maintain and control that, to keep that power for themselves, maybe even indefinitely. Artificial intelligence, it is a new frontier. It is a huge danger to humanity, to democracy, to our electoral process, to everything. And we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on ways to control it, to make sure that it doesn't undermine our society, maybe even become some sort of existential threat to humankind itself. Throw it out there.
Just reminds me of Jurassic Park, where Dr. Ian Malcolm says, we've been so wrapped up in can we make this technology that we forgot to question if we should ever have done it in the first place.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is dangerous, and it's this election is going to be fun, but I don't think it's going to end up the way anybody wanted it to.
This is going to be a unique election, unlike any election we've seen in the past, because of technology, because of the internet, because of the way it's being used, because of censorship, and because of even artificial intelligence. We know that even in the last federal election in Canada, the Liberals were using psychographic polling, not like traditional polling. They were essentially doing, market testing of their messaging. This was during, the pandemic. And they were gauging public opinion. They would put messaging out, get polling data back, basically testing the messaging on groups of people to figure out what was resonating with people, and then fine-tuning the messaging, sending it back out, getting it back, and then finding out how it was playing in people's minds so that they could then deliver a very refined message to the public en masse in order to get an emotional reaction from them, which is why you were seeing messaging surrounding the use of, the pandemic and the lockdowns and the masking. So the words that Justin Trudeau was using during the campaign were very carefully chosen in order to get a very specific response out of people. And here's the thing, Brendan, how do people know that they aren't being manipulated on that level right now by various political forces? How do you know you aren't being manipulated? How do you know your mind isn't being controlled at this point? And I keep asking that question. I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and I ask myself that every single day, because I'm subjected to so much information overload coming from all these different sides. I'm like, how do I know that I'm even sane anymore? Because how much influence is being exerted over me so that I believe certain things. And I think I've got, some degree of cushion on this because of my media background. So I'm able to identify, spot propaganda and even misinformation or just outright lies, where some people maybe don't have that same, I guess, mental privilege, if you will, because they don't, their jobs don't involve media or their lives don't involve media the way that mine always has. I've always been immersed in media, so this is in my wheelhouse, if you will, right? But the general person, they don't have that level of media literacy because it's not their job. Like, I can't lay bricks worth a darn. So if you want bricks laid, don't ask me, because your house will be crooked, right? That's not in my area. But media, yeah, like, I think I'm at least cushioned from it mentally a little bit. But even me, like, I can see that we're under this constant assault, this information warfare assault from all different sides, and it really concerns me. It makes me wonder if AI isn't already being used.
It is already being used, absolutely. And a big thing that you kind of have to pay attention to right now is how much social engineering is happening. The economic social governance score is here, whether we like it or not. It's in China. We already know it's in China, and it's already here. Like, just it doesn't matter. Go woke, go broke. These companies don't care. Target doesn't care. Bud Light doesn't care. They don't even care about these social issues that they're supposedly talking about. But you just have to think. It's all brainwashing, is what it is. You know it's brainwashing. And with all that stuff that you said about the Canadian government during the 2021 election, we know for a fact that the Canadian military was engaging in psyops on the Canadian public at that time. Now, I don't have any direct evidence for this, but the Canadian government was also doing that with what you were explaining there, where they were, with the polling that they were doing. Bet your ass it's connected. You bet your ass it's connected. The government and the military working hand in hand, brainwash the Canadian people and just drive fear into everyone. Now, you brought up an interesting point about people and, are they protected from this? Well, all you have to do is talk to an apolitical person. The average person isn't political. Now, I had the privilege of talking to somebody yesterday, and they're the ones that brought up, what's going on with this Donald Trump thing? And, of course, it brought on their Trump derangement syndrome. And then all you have to do is ask why. They don't have an answer. They go, Donald Trump is racist. I was like, well, how is he racist? Well, Donald Trump is this or that. Okay, how? Why? Can you explain? Do you have an example for that? You don't have an example for it. The average person takes the base message that they're fed, that they're spoon-fed, and they just regurgitate it on a regular basis.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. Like, talk to an apolitical person sometime, and these people will always talk to you about it. They bring it up. They watch CNN, and they're watching Trump get railed on all day by all these anchors, and they go, "Oh, Trump, eh?" And then all you have to do is push them just a little bit, and you'll find it's empty in there. They don't think about any of this stuff. They don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, 1 million auditors says, spoken like a true liberal. I don't know. Is that aimed at me?
That guy really loves you.
I don't know.
That guy really loves you. You gotta crush.
And Anne says, Rick, please do not degrade other people, meaning speak about them when not on to defend their thoughts or ways. Please, it is a turnoff. Who did I attack that was not here? Should I be apologizing to someone?
Do we have to call Chrystia Freeland on?
Oh, is that what it was? And was it the Chrystia Freeland thing?
We were making fun
or was it somebody else? I don't know. Chrystia Freeland? I don't know. Comments were no value with Clyde Do Something. You are right unless you donate. Do a super. Oh, I don't know. I don't really watch Clyde, but he. I've seen a little bit of his stuff. He seems like a nice guy. That's all I can say. Do you watch Clyde Do Something, Brendan?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I've
He's a
talked to
friend
him.
of yours,
I've
right?
done a show. No, I did a show with Brando on the Go at one point, and he
Right.
was on the show too. We did
Is
like
he
a
still doing his?
collaboration.
Yeah, is he still
I don't
doing
think
his
so.
show? He stopped?
Not sure. I think he's doing other stuff now. I'm not sure what's going on. I wouldn't be able to make a statement about it, but yeah, no, I've met Clyde, and we made the newspaper in Canada one time on the National Post when we interviewed the Prime Minister who stole freedom, author Derek. What's the last name?
Oh
Anyway,
yeah. Derek Smith.
Derek Smith, thank you. And
He's running for mayor of Calgary, actually.
That's awesome. Good to hear.
Ann says it sounded like I was degrading Chris Sky. I didn't degrade Chris Sky. I said he was on a world tour.
Yeah, you didn't really hit him with anything. We didn't say it.
I just said he was on Alex Jones, and he is on a world tour, and he is talking right now about I guess he's predicting that mask mandates and lockdowns will be coming back as early as next month. That's what I said. Is that degrading in some way?
No, it's
Alex
not.
Jones is
In
making
fact,
the same prediction.
You had Chris Sky on your show not too long ago, and your
I did.
interactions with him were.
I was actually very impressed with his mastery of the issues at the local level in Toronto. He really had a handle on the local issues. Now, I think one of the reasons he did not do very well in the election is because he didn't really talk about the local issues. So he didn't connect with the majority of voters the way he might have. He focused on these globalist issues, the issues that are specifically of interest to, I think, freedom fighters or the freedom movement. And by doing that, I think he just kind of missed connecting with a larger base of support that might have been out there for him. So I think the campaign didn't get the traction it might have otherwise. But I
thought your interaction was very professional, especially considering the last time we talked to him, it was not that great.
Yeah, so I mean that's okay. So that's all right. Anyway.
No, it's good. Whatever.
Yeah, and Lori is in the chat, and she's promoting the show coming up at 9 p.m. tonight, Strange Bedfellows, where we're going to be talking with the Nick Brana, who's with the People's Party, but in the United States. So, yeah, and I will be along for that, Lori, by the way, because I've kind of got some other stuff that I was having some I was supposed to be on the show at 9, and I will be there. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, so you're watching, and I'll tell you, I'll be there. I won't leave you high and dry. I had a bit of an issue with some stuff here tonight, and I wasn't sure if I was going to have to work on that or not, but I've kind of got that squared away. So 9 p.m. for Lori's show, Strange Bedfellows. Talking about the People's Party in the U.S., People's Party in Canada, the populist movement really overall. Is what that is.
And I gotta say, like, hats off to Lori. Like, she's done some pretty. She's putting a lot of work in, and I've seen like what she does, and I wanted to say, thanks, Lori. It's been really interesting content, and it's yeah, I love it. I don't get to always watch it, but when I do get the chance to, I do watch it. I mean, I keep getting you in my feed, Rick Walker. You're always in my feed. I don't understand people say, "Oh, I didn't see it in my feed." I'm always getting updates about Maverick Media on YouTube.
Well, not tonight, not on the main channel, because we're on a 2-week ban again. I'm thinking, well, we got to be doing something right if they're banning us again. So
I think they're on a lot of channels I watch. are all going to Rumble right now, and they are posting updates stating that YouTube is giving them all kinds of trouble right now. So kind of reminds me of a place I used to work where everybody would read books in between work, and out of nowhere, everybody in management would get their panties in a bunch, and then they would enforce the rules, but then they would forget, and then they would stop, and then they would enforce the rules again. I don't know what's going on, but I think this could be a big push up to the election forthcoming in the United States. I think that this is what it's all about. And we'll know for sure when channels like Kimcast get kicked off of YouTube, which is a possibility.
Yep. Well, you know, they're kind of pushing us around that way too, and that's why we've created like a mini network so far with other streamers, and I guess it's unofficially at this point sort of a Maverick News network, but we'll see, you know, where we end up with it. And you know, I think that's you know, got some potential there, just to make sure that people have a voice, even if they do get banned on YouTube. But I mean, I'm also at the point, Brendan, where it's like I just kind of don't care at a certain level. I don't want to lose our subscribers or connection with the subscribers. That's what concerns me. But as far as building on YouTube and trying to make something of it, I'm kind of giving up, because there's no future there. You can't build anything with them, because at a moment's notice they'll just take it away from you. If you say anything that they don't like, they'll ban you. If someone comes on your show and says something they don't like, they'll ban you for that. If someone comes in your chat and says something they don't like, they'll ban you for that. So you're not just on at risk of being banned because of what you say. It's if you bring somebody on or give someone even access to your chat, they'll ban you for that. And then when they do ban you or strike you, they just give you some vague reason, and they don't really explain even what it is. And not only that, a lot of this stuff is complaint driven, and you have no control over that either. And so I'm just at the point where it's like with Facebook and YouTube, it's like, look, if you don't want us, screw off. Like, we don't care. We'll go someplace where we are wanted. We have to build. You know, we have to
YouTube,
build.
When all that is left is cat videos on your platform, there'll be nobody there to watch anymore.
And Leo is saying there might be something wrong with my microphone. I'll tell you, we've had audio issues here all night. No, that's the right mic for me. I don't know. I think maybe he's referring to the background noise that we're getting, and I think some of that's coming off your audio a little bit tonight, Brendan. Yeah, there's been something weird with the audio all night.
Yeah, it's me.
There.
I used my phone tonight, so next time I come on, I'll try to get my PC brought out. It's I just had to make some office adjustments.
Yeah, so sorry about the crappy audio here this evening, folks, but thanks for sticking with us, and that actually does get us almost to 8:30 tonight. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Brendan, for a few final thoughts before we wrap up and we rejig and get ready for Lori's program at 9 p.m.
Well, Rick, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to see you again and have conversations with you. So thank you so much for that. Furthermore, everybody out there, keep working on yourself, stay healthy, be strong. And that's the important thing.
Yeah. And I was so glad to see you went fishing the other day with your kids. And that's awesome. And so, you know, that reminds all of us, I think, when we see that no matter how weird things have become, no matter how crazy things are about to get, even as we head into next month amid this perfect political storm that we've been talking about, it still comes down to stuff like that. And no matter what's going on, you can always just walk outside with a fishing rod and your kids, go down, throw a line in the water, and find a little sanity that way. And so, Brendan, thank you, my friend. I love you, man. I miss you. I miss you. And guys,
we'll do. I'll fix my audio.
Okay.
somehow.
Yeah.
I'll get
Fix your audio. We'll get you back on, and we'll do more. And guys, thank you everybody for joining us here on the program tonight. Be sure to tune in a half an hour. Back here, same Maverick channels and other channels too for Lori's program, Strange Bedfellows, a Maverick multimedia presentation as well. So look forward to seeing y'all back here in a half an hour. And there's the man, Brendan. Okay. Love you, man. Love you, Mavericks. Catch you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and in a half an hour on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.